Welcome. You're here now, not to rush, not to strive, but to rest, to listen, to be carried gently into another time, through slow winding corridors of the past, where echoes still cling to stone and shadow. Tonight, we begin not in the palaces or temples, but beneath them. Rome as you know it, the Rome of statues, of arches, of law and empire, rested on something else. On pipes and bricks and bricks and bricks, on the backs of the silent and the sweat of the unseen. This is not the Rome of Caesar's speeches, not the Rome of golden eagles and marble columns. This is the Rome of mildew and stagnant pools. The Rome that moved waste so that beauty might flourish above. As you settle in, perhaps closing your eyes, allow your thoughts to sink below the surface. Follow the slope of a cobbled alley, slip past the doorways, past the dogs asleep on thresholds. Follow the stink, faint at first, then sour, past the brickwork, down into the darkness. We begin there. Imagine this. You are not a citizen. You are not even a free man exactly. You're a low-paid laborer in the bowels of the eternal city, assigned to one of the least respected, least visible roles in the vast Roman machine. You are a cloacarius, a cleaner of sewers, and the sun has not yet risen. Your home is a cramped corner of a tenement block, a walk-up of creaking wood and brick, with thin walls and the constant hum of voices. There is no breakfast waiting. You may gnaw on a bit of hard bread, perhaps last night's bean mash, still cold, eaten quickly with your fingers. The tools of your trade are simple: a hooked pole, a bucket with thick rope, a small oil lamp for light, if you're lucky, and a thin tunic that will not stay clean for long. No one greets you when you arrive at the entrance to the cloaca, the sewer. Just a low opening in a stone wall, covered in moss and warning. The air is already foul, warm, humid, and heavy, with more than you want to name. You step inside anyway. It's not just dark, it's wet dark, where light seems to hang in the air, and then disappear. The tunnel is cramped. You crouch, then crawl. The ceiling brushes your back. The walls weep with condensation. All around you, the rhythmic trickle of filth, the faint splashing of rats, the creak of your own limbs as you work your way deeper. What are you doing here? You are clearing blockages, human waste, food scraps, animal carcasses, and cloth. All of it collects in the old stone channels, and when it piles up too much, it causes problems above. The city depends on the water flowing, so you go in, and you dig it out. You wedge your pole into the muck, pull it loose bit by bit. You feel it catch on something soft. You don't ask what. Above you, the world carries on. Children play in courtyards. Merchants shout over figs. A senator is carried in a litter down a bright sunny street. But down here, it's all different. The light from your lamp flickers, casting long shadows over the slick bricks. The air smells of decay and mold and rot. Sometimes the tunnels flood. A heavy rain can send a wave crashing through, sweeping away anything that isn't anchored. You've seen men vanish. Sometimes a methane pocket ignites. A careless flame, a boom, and nothing but silence afterward. You wear no gloves. You breathe everything in. You may wash after, you may not. Your skin itches constantly. You scratch until it bleeds. No one wants to sit beside you in the tavern. No one remembers your name. And yet, this work matters. The baths above, the fountains, the clean streets. They depend on the quiet labor of men like you. But no one says thank you. No statue honors your effort. Only the rats notice when you stop returning. By the time you crawl back out into the evening light, your limbs ache, your stomach turns. The sun feels harsh after the dim tunnels. You may earn a few copper coins, enough for stale bread, maybe a thin stew. And tomorrow, you will do it again. Now breathe. Feel how far away that life is, and how close. We don't think of them, the sewer cleaners of Rome, but they were there, every day, in the dark. Their rhythm was not grand, not glorious, but necessary. In a moment, we'll surface into another corner of Roman life, one of plans and symmetry, of ideals and ambitions. But for now, breathe in the quiet, the cold, the damp, the faint echo of footsteps in a tunnel below the world. You have left the tunnels now, the filth, the heat, the tight crawl spaces. You emerge into light, sunlight falling across columns and courtyards. Rome stretches before you, vast and pulsing. But now, your focus shifts to lines, to angles, to the mind of a man who imagined the shape of it all, Vitruvius. He is not remembered in marble, not carved in triumphal pose, but his ideas shaped the very stones of the empire. Imagine yourself in his world now. It is the 1st century BCE. Rome teeters between republic and empire. Civil wars shake its foundations. And yet amid the chaos, some still dream of symmetry. Vitruvius is an architect, not famous in his own time, not wealthy, not widely admired, but steady, thoughtful, and burdened by vision. He does not live for applause. He lives for order. His clothes are plain. His gait is unhurried. He walks the streets with a small roll of wax tablets tucked under one arm, his mind always turning. To him, the world is a puzzle waiting to be solved through geometry and proportion. The perfect temple must not just look right, it must be right, balanced, grounded, human. He believes in a rule: firmitas, utilitas, venustus, strength, usefulness, and beauty. Not one without the others. Vitruvius once served with Julius Caesar's engineers, building war machines, siege equipment. He knew the smell of burned timber and hot metal. He had seen cities taken by force. But now he wants to build rather than destroy, to make something lasting, to teach others how to do the same. And so he writes. His De Architectura is not flashy. It is dense, methodical, and full of observations. How to mix lime for mortar, how to choose a site for a city, why rooms should face certain directions to capture light. He includes instructions for constructing aqueducts, and even advice on stage acoustics in theatres. His mind wanders easily between disciplines, not just stone and structure, but music, medicine, astronomy. In his treatise, he writes of the human body, arms outstretched, feet together, the source of ideal proportion. The image will later inspire Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, centuries later. But Vitruvius never sees that. He never knows. He grows old in relative obscurity. No triumphs, no statues, just drawings, notes, ideas. He worries constantly about the decline of Roman taste, how builders cut corners, how temples are adorned without understanding. He cannot rest. Even as an old man, he edits his manuscripts, struggling with fading vision, unsure if anyone will read them after he is gone. He is not interested in greatness. He wants precision, a kind of balance between art and need, form and function. And, though he likely dies in anonymity, his words survive. Architects of the Renaissance pore over his work. Modern engineers still whisper his name, not for style but for structure, not for glory but for grounded, solid thought. As you rest here, imagine him at his table, by the light of a small lamp, scratching notes onto parchment. Outside, Rome shifts and howls with politics and war. But inside, Vitruvius draws. He measures. He erases. The world above is messy. He tries to make sense of it. You may not remember his face, but every column that rises in harmonious proportion, every square that feels just right, carries a piece of his quiet legacy. Let us leave him now, his wax tablets full, his tools resting by his elbow. We move once more underground, but this time, not among filth, but among symbols, candles, and silence. We return beneath the surface now, but not to the filth and clamour of Rome's sewers. Not this time. This descent is different, quieter, intentional. The steps are narrow and worn. The air shifts as you go deeper. The scent of earth and stone grows stronger, and then a chamber opens before you. Low ceilings, painted walls, faded by time. 2 long benches run along either side of the room. At the end stands a carved image, a man slaying a bull, his face calm, the bull's eyes wide. This is a Mithraeum. Imagine yourself sitting cross-legged here, in the dim flicker of oil lamps. You are one of perhaps a dozen initiates. You are here not for spectacle, but for something more intimate, a secret. The cult of Mithras was never official. No grand temples, no processions through the city. It thrived in these small, hidden spaces, and it asked much of its followers. The god Mithras came from the east, a figure likely adapted from Persian mythology. But the Romans made him their own. They imagined him born from stone, a knife in his hand, a torch in the other. His slaying of the cosmic bull, the tauroctony, became the centerpiece of the faith, a symbolic act thought to bring life, light, and renewal to the world. But what did it mean? The truth is, we still don't fully know. That's part of the mystery. No sacred texts survive. No Roman writer ever clearly described the rituals. What? We know, we gather from ruins, from carvings and inscriptions, from hints. We know the cult appealed to soldiers, to merchants, to men who lived on the margins of Roman power. Membership was exclusive. Only men, often bound by military brotherhood. There were grades of initiation, rituals, trials. Each level brought you closer to Mithras, and always in darkness. You ate together, reclined on those benches. You drank wine, perhaps reenacted the god's trials. There were 7 grades, each symbolized by animals and stars. You began as a Corax, a raven. You might become a Leo, a Perses, a Heliodromus. Eventually, if you endured, you might reach Pater, the father. But few did. The Mithraeum itself was symbolic, a cave, a cosmos, a belly of the earth. To enter was to step outside the ordinary world, to seek meaning in silence. And yet these places once dotted the empire, beneath homes, near forts, under baths. Many were hidden, deliberately buried. Even today, new ones are found by accident, beneath city streets, behind crumbling walls. In Rome alone, over a dozen Mithraea have been uncovered. One, beneath the modern church of San Clemente, holds vivid frescoes and altars. Another, near the baths of Caracalla, still bears its sacred benches. In Ostia, the port city of Rome, dozens were clustered near warehouses, perhaps kept by dockworkers, sailors, customs officials. And yet by the 4th century, the cult was fading. Christianity was rising. The empire was shifting. The quiet faiths of soldiers and merchants had no place in the new imperial religion. Mithraea was sealed, statues defaced, rituals forgotten, and still, they endure, below our feet. They whisper of a time when belief was secret, when the divine lived in caves, and the faithful gathered by lamplight. Even now, archaeologists work slowly, brushing dust from a painted bull, measuring a hidden chamber's width. They know they will never recover the full meaning, only fragments, and so the mystery remains. You sit in silence a while longer, imagining the flicker of ancient flames on stone. Above, the city still roars. Below, this sacred silence holds steady. Let us rise now, slowly. Let the mystery remain. We will not solve it tonight. Instead, we ascend into warmth, into light, into the upper world once again. But this time, not to labor, not to design. This time, we recline. The sun has dipped low now, and the city above grows still. Not with sleep, but with the soft hum of preparation. Somewhere behind high walls, in the heart of a domus, a villa home in the wealthier quarters, Of Rome, slaves scurry quietly between kitchen and courtyard. Torches are lit. The sound of sandals on marble echoes down a hallway. You are invited, but not to eat as you normally would. Not quickly, not plainly. Tonight, you recline. You enter the triclinium, the dining room of the Roman elite. It is rectangular, perhaps with mosaic floors, walls painted in deep reds and golds, and niches holding small statues of household gods. 3 couches surround a low table. Each holds 3 guests. 9 is ideal, intimate, but proper. You remove your sandals. You lie not on your back, but on your side, left elbow bent, head propped on your hand, your right hand free for food. It is not comfort, it is performance. You are not here only to dine, but to display restraint, wit, conversation, to be seen. The feast begins slowly. First, the gustatio, the starter course. You are offered small dishes, olives cured in honey and vinegar, cold eggs sprinkled with herbs, perhaps a salad of lettuce and herbs dressed in garum. Ah, garum, the fermented fish sauce, beloved across Rome. It is sharp, salty, pungent, a flavor that clings to the back of your throat. To many today, nearly unbearable. To Romans, exquisite. The wine flows already. It is not consumed neat. That would be uncivilized. It is diluted, usually 1 part wine to 2 or 3 parts water, sometimes warm, sometimes cooled with snow, spiced, honeyed, altered to suit the palate. A slave stands by with a jug, ready to refill your cup. Conversation drifts around the room. Politics, philosophy, gossip. A guest quotes Virgil. Another counters with Catullus. Then the prima mensa arrives. The main course, a roasted dormouse stuffed with herbs, slices of pork belly, crackled at the edge, perhaps a whole fish, grilled and dressed with a wine reduction. All served in small portions, but many of them. The goal is not hunger, but taste, to savor, to linger. The rich do not eat with haste, they pass time. In between dishes, musicians may play, a flute, a lyre, or a slave might recite poetry. A dwarf juggles citrus fruits. A woman dances slowly, barefoot, veiled. This is not excess in the modern sense, not a buffet piled with food. It is controlled decadence, a cultivated performance of abundance and refinement. Then, secunda mensa, the dessert. Not cakes, not chocolates, but dried fruits, dates stuffed with nuts, cheese drizzled with honey, little figs, warmed slightly, releasing their scent, and with that, the meal ends. But not the gathering. Some linger for hours, arguing points of rhetoric, quoting philosophers, or simply lying back and letting the wine take over. Sometimes, a deeper revel begins, less formal, less proper. The wealthy host may disappear. The slaves grow quiet, a cup is spilled, a candle gutters. And yet, this is not joy for all. The slaves, always present, move like shadows behind the scenes. They serve, silently, refill plates, clean spills. They do not eat what you eat. The kitchens are hot and cramped, the smells cling to them. Their hands blister from lifting heavy platters. And when the guests are gone, they work still, scraping plates, rinsing amphorae, sweeping ash. For the elite, this feast is identity, a ritual that confirms their place in the world. They dine, reclining because they can. But many Romans never recline. Most eat while seated on a stool or standing. A bowl of porridge, a crust of bread, a few olives, if fortunate. There is no entertainment, no course sequence, just sustenance, and even among the wealthy, there is emptiness. In letters and diaries, you find them restless, worried about appearances, anxious about rivals. The feast masks instability. It is a mirror of empire, polished, ornate, and deeply uneven. Still, as the evening wanes, the flames dim and the plates empty. You rise, your limbs a little numb from reclining, your mind fogged with diluted wine. The marble floor is cool beneath your feet. You walk through the silent halls, past frescoes of gods and heroes, through colonnaded courtyards into the Roman night. A breeze moves the cypress leaves. The streets are quiet now, and somewhere, down in the cloaca, a sewer worker stirs, beginning his night's labor beneath your feet. And now, our long walk through ancient Rome draws to a close. We began in the depths, not metaphorically, but quite literally. Beneath the marble streets, among dripping stones and echoing tunnels, we followed the quiet footsteps of those rarely remembered, the sewer cleaners, the laborers, the hands that kept the empire clean while never touching glory. Then we rose, not into the daylight but into memory, to trace the mind of Vitruvius, a man who thought in harmony, symmetry, and order. He saw the world not only as it was, but as it could be, shaped by rules, softened by proportion, always reaching towards something higher, even when the walls around him were crumbling. We paused, underground again, to linger in the half-light of the Mithraeums, where flickering oil lamps cast shadows across ancient altars, and men whispered sacred rites in secret. There, in that hidden world of ritual and silence, we caught a different glimpse of Rome, not its armies or roads or emperors, but its quiet hunger for mystery, its yearning for meaning beneath the surface. And finally, we reclined beside the elite. Among the carved tables and tiled courtyards of the Roman upper class, we tasted the strange stillness of excess, not indulgence for joy, but consumption as performance, luxury laced with formality and hierarchy. Across these hours, we wandered not through battles or triumphs, but through the lives that held the empire together, some in darkness, some in silence, some in gold-trimmed sandals, and through it all there was rhythm. The rhythm of footsteps echoing in stone corridors, the rhythm of labor, sunrise to sundown, the rhythm of ritual, daily, seasonal, sacred. Perhaps now, as you rest, you feel that rhythm still, gentle, distant, and unhurried. Let the city fade. Let the marble streets fall silent. Let the torches burn low. You do not need to remember all that was said. History does not demand it. It waits patiently in the quiet corners of your mind. For now, breathe slowly, feel the stillness, and drift, as softly as ashes from a Roman brazier, into sleep. Welcome. Tonight, we return to a time where the sun rose like a god and stones sang with the echo of hammers. A time where eternity was not imagined, but carved, block by block, into limestone. You've heard of pyramids. You've seen their sharp shadows stretched across sand. But what was it really like? To be there, to build them, to breathe the dry air, thick with dust and silence, to live beside the Nile, where time flowed slowly and life bowed to death. In this journey, you will walk as one of the many, not the pharaoh, not the architect, but the worker, the scribe, the servant. Your feet will press into hot stone, your hands into grain, your voice into quiet ritual. For the next 4 hours, let yourself drift back. Let the hum of ancient Egypt wrap around you. Let the sands soften your thoughts. And let history, slow, heavy, and forgotten, carry you gently towards sleep. You wake before the sun. The air is cool, barely. It won't stay that way. Soon the light will be searing and the sand will sting your skin. But for now, there's only the low rumble of voices, the shuffle of men rising from mats, and the distant clatter of wooden ladles scooping out barley gruel. You are not a slave, not exactly. You are a laborer, conscripted, compensated in bread, beer, and time off from farming. You were chosen to serve in the king's grand work. An honor, they said. An obligation, perhaps, but it does not feel like either when your joints ache and your calluses split. Each day follows the same rhythm. Water is hauled from the Nile. Stone is dragged on sleds over slicked sand, ropes taut, and hands bloodless from the strain. There are chants, low, rhythmic sounds meant to keep the pulling steady. Sometimes, priests walk among the workers, splashing cool water or incense, murmuring blessings to keep the spirits of the dead content. No one wants to disturb what lies beneath the rock. You work not beside the pyramid, but at the ramp that spirals endlessly upward. You carry tools, stone chips, copper chisels. You sweep dust. You set water jars in shaded alcoves carved into the limestone itself. Breaks are few, but when they come, you sit with others in the half-shadow of the stone. Your tunic clings to your back. Your bread is dry, but the beer, warm and thick, slides down slowly and gives you enough strength to return. By mid-afternoon, the heat is unbearable. You squint toward the horizon, where the mirage dances and cranes circle above the desert. Some say the pyramid will trap the sun itself, that it is a ladder for the dead king to climb into the afterlife. You do not know, but you know the weight of the stones. You know the silence of night on the construction plain, where the half-built structure watches the stars. You dream sometimes of finishing, but you will not live to see it. Few will. Still, your hands are part of it, part of something that will outlast the flood, the seasons, and even your name. Tomorrow, the rhythm begins again. Imagine now that you are no longer among the laborers. You are seated instead beneath a linen canopy, scrolls unrolled before you, the scent of fresh ink and crushed pigments clinging to the air. Your name is Hemiunu. You are the royal architect, and the stones that rise behind you are your legacy. But the pyramid, it does not come from pride. It does not emerge in a flash of inspiration. It is the slow result of 100 calculations, of patient measurements drawn from chords and stars, of 1,000 sleepless nights under torchlight, adjusting plans that will never be seen by the people who climb the ramp. You are not the pharaoh, but you are of the blood, a cousin, a nephew, kin of the divine line. Still, your burden is heavier than any royal title. The king demands immortality, and you must deliver it, 1 cubit at a time. You speak rarely. There is no need. Your presence commands silence. Your words are orders without sharpness, delivered slowly, like laws carved in stone. At night, you walk the site alone, not for ritual, but for clarity. You watch the moon rise over the dusty scaffolding, trace the slope of the casing stones with your eyes. You whisper to yourself of angles, shadows, alignments. For each stone must fit perfectly, not just with the ones beside it, but with the heavens above. You know the names of the stars, not in the way of priests who chant them in funerary rites, but in the way of a builder who must align the dead with eternity. And when the workers falter, when illness spreads or a ramp crumbles, it is your responsibility, always, to begin again. No one sees you weep. No one would think you capable, but your scrolls bear the smudges of tears all the same. Years pass. You age beside the pyramid. Your joints ache. Your hand trembles when you write, but the pyramid rises still. You will not finish it, but you will be remembered. Your name is inscribed deep inside the burial chamber, beneath the outer stone, where only the dead might find it. You asked for no monument. You built one for another. But in the silence of the tomb, in the perfection of the angle, your legacy rests. And now we turn quietly from the man who measured the horizon to the mysteries hidden beneath his creation. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe in the coolness of stone. Feel the air shift as you duck beneath a low arch. Your footsteps echo softly, not across marble floors or grand atriums, but along a narrow corridor beneath the city of Rome, a corridor that leads you into something ancient, secret, and sacred. You are stepping into a Mithraeum. These are not temples of public grandeur. They are not crowned by sunlight or raised on proud steps. No, the worship of Mithras hides in the earth, beneath taverns, beneath homes, even beneath the mighty baths of Caracalla, places where light barely penetrates, but meaning runs deep. Imagine yourself now as an initiate, drawn into this small, torch-lit chamber carved to resemble a cave. Low stone benches run along both sides. A central aisle divides the room, leading to a carved relief, always the same scene. Mithras, the young god in a flowing cape, slaying a bull as stars shimmer above. The air is thick with incense and whispers. Your sandals make almost no sound against the packed earth. Above, the city bustles. Carts rattle down cobbled roads. Vendors shout about olives and oil. Soldiers laugh over dice games. But here, it is quiet. The rhythm of your breath, the drip of moisture from old ceilings, the low chant of a language half forgotten. Mithraism was not a religion of families. No children, no women, no public rights. Only men, soldiers, officials, clerks, those who craved brotherhood and mystery in a world of shifting power. There are 7 levels of initiation, 7 steps deeper into understanding. From the raven, who first enters in silence, to the father, who presides in solemn calm. Each level has its rites, its tokens, its trials. You, as an initiate, are tested, blindfolded, bound, sometimes symbolically, sometimes not. You eat from a communal meal, bread and wine, in a ritual that mirrors others, but belongs entirely to this hidden world. The rites are never written down. No scrolls, no codices, only memory and repetition. And so, when the Mithraeum falls silent, when Rome's power wanes and new gods rise above the streets, the secrets are buried with the stone. But sometimes, they are found again. Archaeologists, digging for pipes or parking garages, strike a hollow echo. And then, they descend. They find altars covered in soot, carvings with stars and daggers, remnants of meals shared long ago. They find silence that has lasted centuries. They find a world beneath the world, one that speaks in symbols, not sentences. And when they rise back into the sunlit street, there is no fanfare, just a quiet awe that even in a city as loud and enduring as Rome, some histories wait not to be told, but simply to be uncovered. We leave now the dust and shadows of the Mithraeum, and we rise, not to the city streets, but to a marble dining room. Lamps flicker, perfume lingers in the air, and servants wait at the walls without a sound. The first thing you notice is the hush, not the silence of secrecy like the Mithraeum, but the cultivated quiet of expectation. Soft sandals whisper over mosaic floors. Curtains rustle as they are, drawn aside. Somewhere, a flute plays lazily, not for dancing, but as decoration, an audible ornament to the evening's wealth. You have been invited to dine, not merely to eat, for in a Roman domus, eating is ritual, theatre, and display. All at once, the host has spared no expense. The marble floors are cool beneath your feet, laid with geometric patterns that reflect torchlight. Painted walls surround you, scenes of gods and myth, meant to impress, not inspire. And there, at the center of it all, the triclinium. A 3-sided couch, low and padded with cushions, meant for reclining, because sitting is for the hurried. Reclining is for those who have time, status, and servants. You ease onto your left side, elbow nestled in a bolster. You are handed a damp cloth scented with myrrh. You do not ask what it's for. Everyone knows. This is to wipe your hands before the feast begins. Forks do not yet exist in this world. Only fingers, bread, and the occasional spoon. The first course is light, something gentle to open the palate. Perhaps olives marinated in wine, cheese wrapped in fig leaves, or eggs soaked in brine and vinegar. Then, the real feast begins. There is fish, simmered, grilled, or salted, but always presented with a flourish. There is peacock, or if the host wishes to show off, dormice stuffed with herbs and pine nuts. All of it seasoned not to taste fresh, but to taste expensive, with fermented sauces, imported spices, and liberal dashes of garum. The infamous fish sauce, sharp and lingering, used on nearly everything. You sip wine, but never unmixed. To drink it pure is uncivilized. Instead, you are served diluted cups, infused with rose petals or warm spices, poured by a slave who stands silently at your side. The conversation flows as smoothly as the wine. Politics, poetry, gossip, and philosophy are passed around like plates. Your host speaks just enough to remind everyone of their generosity, but never so much as to outshine their guests. Somewhere, a small boy recites Virgil, an acrobat tumbles, a flute player returns, now joined by a harp, and still the food comes. A roast boar's head, mouth stuffed with dates, oysters from distant shores, honeyed pastries that crumble at the lightest touch. It is indulgent. It is overwhelming, and slowly it becomes empty, because the feast is not about sustenance, it is performance, status, a delicate balancing act between generosity and spectacle. The food is rich, but not always enjoyed. The wine is plentiful, but not always savoured. The diners recline, but rarely relax. They laugh, yes, but often too loudly. They flatter, but rarely mean it. The slaves move invisibly, refilling plates, replacing cloths, carrying away half-eaten delicacies to be thrown away or fed to the household dogs. This is a world of abundance without satisfaction, and as the oil lamps burn lower and guests begin to rise with careful grace, you feel the weight of it all, not just the food, but the performance, the effort of ease, the illusion of contentment. Tomorrow, the host will boast of the lavish spread, the guests will murmur approval, but tonight, as you step into the cool Roman air, past marble statues and manicured gardens, you wonder, who truly enjoyed the meal, and did any of them taste the simple sweetness of a quiet bite taken in solitude? As the evening fades and the lights of ancient Rome dim behind us, let us take a final breath. You have walked through sewers and shadows. You have sat beside architects and gods. You have dined in splendor and found silence beneath the noise. And now, here in the present, in the stillness of your own time, you may rest, clean, warm, and far from the grime and ritual of a world long buried. Sleep well and dream gently of marble halls, flickering torches, and the forgotten rhythm of lives once lived in the heart of an empire. Imagine, for a moment, a city within a city, a place sealed behind vermilion gates, its walls thick with centuries of silence, where gold roofs shimmer quietly beneath the morning sun, and each hallway whispers of vanished footsteps. This is not a city of noise, but one of ritual, of stillness, and beneath that stillness, a slow and constant tension. Welcome to the Forbidden City. Tonight, we will wander its narrow corridors. We will move slowly, softly, among servants, scribes, and shadows. We will trace the cold stone paths of imperial life, not as honored guests, but as silent observers. From the long, exhausting days of the emperor's eunuchs, to the restless mind of a forgotten empress, to tombs buried beneath the city's careful symmetry, and finally, to the quiet lives of those who watched, recorded, and obeyed. This is not a history of conquests or wars. It is a history of waiting, of obedience, of ceremonies that repeat and repeat until even time forgets their purpose. And so, let your body rest. Let your breath slow. We are going to the heart of a still beating empire. It begins before dawn. You sleep on a thin mat, not in one of the palace's many halls, but in a cramped side chamber, stacked with others like you. The air is cold, damp, with the breath of dozens of sleepers. There is no fireplace, no cushion, only duty. Before the roosters stir, you are already up, feet bare against chilled stone. You dress quickly, not in bright silk or embroidered robes, but in simple dark clothing. Your belt is tight, your hair shaved neatly. You carry no sword, no symbols of status, only a scroll of instructions and the knowledge that being unseen is part of survival. You are a eunuch in the service of the emperor. Your day is not your own. It belongs to the schedule carved by others, and you follow it with the precision of a sundial. There is water to carry, scrolls to deliver, locks to check. You do not question, you do not hesitate. If the emperor is to rise at the hour of the rabbit, you must ensure the incense is already lit. If a concubine has requested tea, you prepare it exactly. 1 finger's width of ginger, a petal of lotus, boiled in water that never quite cools. The palace is enormous. 9,000 rooms, dozens of courtyards, more doorways than you can count. And yet, you know your path precisely, not because you were taught it once, but because you have walked it 1,000 times. Your stomach rumbles. There is no breakfast yet. Sometimes a bit of rice, a ladle of watery congee, but not always. If a superior passes, you bow low, deep, but not too deep. If a noblewoman appears, you lower your gaze. It is not about reverence. It is about not being noticed. To be noticed is to be remembered. And to be remembered is a dangerous thing in the heart of power. Your feet ache before the sun rises fully. You polish bronze mirrors. You wipe fingerprints from lacquered doors. You adjust the emperor's sleeping arrangements, even if he will not notice. You are not supposed to sleep. Not during the day. Not during the night unless allowed. And sometimes, the hours blur until the walls seem to shift and the endless corridors feel like dreams you can't wake from. You are trusted with secrets, but never told them. You are handed letters, but never allowed to read. You hear whispers in the hall of poison, of plots, of favorites rising and vanishing overnight. You keep your silence. You are not quite man, not quite servant, not quite citizen. You are palace, flesh, a living fixture, an extension of the forbidden city itself. And still, you serve. You attend ceremonies without invitation. You watch great lords bow, empresses frown, and the emperor sit like a mountain of silk and authority. You bow too. Your knees hurt. You still do not eat. Later, perhaps, a small meal. Cold dumplings, a piece of melon if you are lucky. And when night falls, your work continues. You clean the lanterns. You check the locks again. You prepare for another day just like this one. And if you sleep, you do so lightly because a bell may ring, a name may be called, and if you are not already on your feet, someone else will be. In the forbidden city, there is always someone else. Now, let us move beyond the narrow chambers and the hushed footsteps of the eunuchs. Let us climb quietly into the high-walled inner court. Here, among the whispering silks and the still, perfumed air, dwells a woman you will not find in most scrolls. She is present in paintings, smiling faintly, but unnamed. History did not record her voice, only her titles, only her duties. She is the Empress, or perhaps one of the many women who held that title and lived most of their lives behind a screen. Imagine yourself now, walking in her slippers, soft, embroidered, barely touching the floor. You rise at dawn, not to labor, but to be seen. Your hair is coiled in careful loops, weighted with jade pins. It takes an hour to prepare your face, powder, color, precision. And then you wait. You wait for summons, for audiences, for the emperor's glance. You do not control the court, not directly, but you are watched, your posture, your speech, your alliances with consorts and attendants. You host banquets where each dish must be chosen not for flavor, but for symbolism. A pear sliced into perfect halves, not too early, lest it hint at separation. A carp steamed whole, for luck, always for luck. In theory, You are the most honored woman in the empire. In practice, you are often the loneliest. You may be confined to the inner palace. Your family cannot visit freely. You are not free to walk the city. The Forbidden City is named well. Even for you, behind painted fans and silken sleeves, you whisper. You plan. Sometimes you write letters, covertly, through trusted maids. Other times you embroider endlessly, threading meaning into patterns no one else will ever read. There are rivalries. Other women who seek favor, cliques of ladies-in-waiting, courtiers whose words are as soft as their traps are sharp. And then there is the emperor. He may visit, or not. You do not ask. He is a presence more than a person. A dragon seated on red lacquer, his words weighed by scribes, his moods forecasted like weather. Perhaps he is kind. Perhaps he is not. But he is not yours. Your children, if you are permitted them, are raised by others. If you bear a son, he may be taken from you to be educated as an heir. If you do not, your standing dims. In time, you are replaced or forgotten. You live still, but as a figurehead, quiet in your golden robes, attending ceremonies whose meaning has long faded. And when your days draw to a close, there may be no portrait, no poem, no name remembered, only a line in the records, noting your death, and the appointment of the next empress. Even in the highest rooms, in the most gilded chambers, the walls whisper the same truth. Stillness can be a prison. Now, we will descend again, not to the laborers or the royals, but to the sacred spaces buried beneath both. Now, imagine the earth beneath the Forbidden City, beneath the stones, beneath the bricks, beneath the tiled eaves and the echoing courtyards. Imagine walking into the dark, down narrow passages not meant for daily use, tunnels rarely mapped, corridors forgotten in records but remembered in whispers. But let us take a quiet turn here, not toward Rome, though their Mithraeums were well known, but to the hidden spiritual corners of the East, where mystery was not illuminated, but preserved in the dark. You may not find a Mithraeum beneath Beijing, not in name, but there were hidden temples, sealed shrines, and sects that practiced under moonlight, outside official favor. Imagine now, a low space carved from earth or nestled behind the rear chamber of a government granary. A hidden altar, small and circular, bathed in the faint glow of oil lamps. The air here is heavy, fragrant with burned incense and ancient oil. Each breath is tinged with the memory of ritual, the wax, the ash, the musk of robes worn again and again. Here, a group of men or women gather, heads bowed, hands cupped. They are silent, not because they fear what lies outside, but because the silence draws them inward. The rites may not have names known today. They may have blended Taoist cosmology with Buddhist symbology and older folk beliefs tied to stars, rivers, and ancestral bones. A bowl of water is placed at the center, still, reflecting the flicker of light like a second world. Paper charms flutter gently. A bell chimes, not sharply, but gently, like the soft sound a bronze spoon might make if laid to rest in a porcelain bowl. These rites are not loud, not bloody, not even forbidden. Always, just ignored, pushed to the margins by the great weight of court-approved dogma. Some called them heterodox, others private, but the people who came here, week after week, year after year, did not speak in rebellion. They prayed in search, for protection, for health, for a child to survive a fever, for rice to grow tall, for a dream to quiet. Sometimes they would chant, not in Mandarin, but in dialects passed down mother to daughter, father to son, or in sounds that didn't belong to any language. Syllables meant only to feel sacred when spoken. The walls of these chambers were plain, stone or packed earth, sometimes covered in a rough linen dyed with herbs. No gold, no dragons, no throne. But here, some found peace, Some found purpose, even within the quiet fear that if someone found them, they might not be allowed to gather again. And when they left, they carried no relics. Only the warmth of candles inside their eyes and the long stillness that sat in their chests like a calm weight. Many of these places have vanished, covered over, destroyed, their entrances sealed by time and earth and silence. But sometimes, when modern archaeologists dig, not even searching for temples, but for pipes or storage rooms, they find traces, a smooth tile arranged in a circle, ashes that don't belong to any kitchen, a carved figure, worn to the edge of meaning, and once in a while they find it intact. A room, small, hidden, still quiet, still waiting. And now, from this underworld of spirit and stone, we rise one last time, not to labour and not to worship, but to dine. Let us now recline, not in comfort, but in ritualized formality. We begin the final segment, dining like a patrician, feasting, reclining, and emptiness. Picture, if you will, the dining chamber of a high-ranking official in the Forbidden City. The room is not loud. It does not bustle with clanging dishes or laughter. Instead, it is muted, its silence broken only by the low murmur of attendants and the rustle of silk robes as they shift ever so slightly. The scent that hangs in the air is rich and layered. Aged soy, a trace of star anise, the sweetness of fermented plum, and the unmistakable salt of dried sea, creatures suspended in sauce. A low table stretches before the host. He does not sit in a chair, but rests on a thick woven mat, his legs folded or extended to one side in the custom of the era. Around him, smaller tables rest before each guest, each one precisely arranged, not just for comfort, but for hierarchy. Placement was everything. The closer you sat to the host, the more honored you were. But with honor came obligation. The meal itself was vast. Dozens of dishes, each in small, delicate portions, presented one after the other. There was no piling of food, no heaping of rice. That would have been vulgar. Instead, there was rhythm. A turnip carved to resemble a lotus blossom. A tiny quail egg preserved in rose brine. Shark fin, not for its taste, but its rarity. Pickled bamboo shoots curled like paper scrolls. You didn't serve yourself. That would be forward. You waited. An attendant would lift a lid, reveal a warm, perfumed delicacy, and offer it to you with small, controlled movements. You accepted, bowed slightly, tasted without speaking. The pace was slow, almost ceremonial. Conversation, when it happened, was hushed and indirect. A clever phrase, a murmured compliment on the porcelain, a question with no real answer. To eat like a patrician was to perform. It was not about appetite. It was about grace. Every gesture conveyed meaning. How you lifted your chopsticks, how long you held your wine before sipping, how you acknowledged the host's generosity without seeming greedy. And the food. The food was sometimes exquisite, but just as often unusual. Not unpleasant, but strange to the unprepared tongue. A jelly made of seaweed and pork skin. A syrup of lotus seed and jujube. A sauce dark with fish fermentation, fragrant but not easily likable. One did not complain. One appreciated. Or at least, one appeared to. Meals could last hours, not because of abundance, but because of the pace. Between courses came tea, poetry. A musician, perhaps, strumming softly on the guqin in a nearby alcove, his face still, his fingers whispering across the strings like wind in reeds. Sometimes, the emperor dined alone. His meals might be composed of over 100 dishes, each one prepared by a different kitchen. He would not eat them all. He could not. Most when untasted, prepared for ceremony, not satisfaction. Each dish had to be inspected for poison. Several officials might die in the course of a single banquet, though their deaths would be quiet, hidden behind a screen. And when the meal was over, there was no dessert in the modern sense. perhaps a fruit, a cube of sugared bean paste, a bitter, tea to signal the return to thought, to duty, to silence. Outside, the city still slept. Lamps swayed in the courtyard breeze. Guards changed shifts with quiet footsteps on the stone paths. Inside, the patrician stood, robes adjusted, his face unreadable. Had he enjoyed the meal? It was impossible to tell. Pleasure was not the goal. Ceremony was. Appearances were. And so, in that final moment, as you watch him walk away into the halls of power, you understand that dining was not indulgence. It was a language, a test, and sometimes a kind of emptiness performed with extraordinary grace. And now, let the tables be cleared. Let the lamps grow dim. Let the echoes of footsteps fade into the hush of midnight stone. We have wandered through sewers and temples, scrolls and shadows, from the hidden burdens of Rome to the disciplined splendor of Beijing. So let us bring it to a gentle close, with the final thoughts and reflections. A soft conclusion. A quiet turning toward rest. By now, the world outside your window may have grown quiet. The lights dimmer, the sounds softened, and your thoughts perhaps slower, heavier, or already drifting beyond. We began beneath the streets of Rome, where water and waste ran through brick-lined channels, tended by those whose names were never written down. In the claustrophobic silence of those ancient cloacae, we glimpsed what it meant to labor in invisibility, to be essential and unseen. The Roman sewer cleaner lived with the weight of filth, of infection, of collapsing ceilings, and the chill that crept into his bones like time itself. He left no monuments, no speeches, just the echo of his footsteps in stone tunnels long forgotten. Then we turned upward into the light of reason and followed Vitruvius, architect, soldier, thinker. A man who tried, perhaps in vain, to impose harmony upon a world that rarely obeyed logic. He dreamt of perfect proportions, of temples that imitated nature, of societies that could be shaped by brick and beam. Yet the truth, like the buildings he served, was often uneven, interrupted, weathered by time. Still, he tried. Still, he wrote. And through his restless mind, we heard the fragile voice of someone who hoped to be understood centuries later, as you have understood him now. From there, we stepped into darkness again. Not of filth this time, but of mystery. The Mithraeums beneath Roman streets whispered of something different. Secrecy, ritual, transformation. Men gathered not in palaces or forums, but in cave-like spaces, bathed in torchlight and silence, acting out a story that promised strength and rebirth. Their world was structured not by marble columns, but by signs in the stars, bloodless sacrifices, and the hush of shared myth. What they believed exactly, we may never fully know, but they believed deeply, and perhaps that is enough. And at last, across a continent and centuries, we came to the hushed banquet halls of the Forbidden City, where power was porcelain thin and meals were a kind of quiet theatre. There, in the slow pace of pickled ginger and fermented fish, we saw that luxury, too, can be a kind of labour, that even comfort has rules, that to be elite was not always to be free. Across it all, one thread wove quietly, the spaces beneath the city, beneath history, beneath grandeur. Whether stooped in sewers or seated at silk-covered tables, people bore burdens we seldom see, some with silence, some with calculation, and some with secrets they never spoke aloud. So now, as your eyes grow heavier, and the rhythm of the past gives way to the quiet of your own room, you might carry with you a little of their stillness. The muffled scrape of a trowel in damp Roman tunnels, the flutter of a parchment turning in a marble atrium, the hush of a sacred chant beneath the streets, the soft clink of a porcelain spoon in a palace lit by lanterns. They are far away now, as they should be. Their work is done, and so is yours. Sleep well, and when you wake, the present will be waiting. But tonight, the past has kept you company. Good night. You are about to enter a place long hidden behind high vermilion walls, a place where silence echoed more than speech, where power wore slippers and walked on silk-covered floors, and where every detail, from the folding of a robe to the placement of a brush, was part of an intricate choreography, the Forbidden City. For centuries, it stood at the heart of Beijing, encased in geometry and guarded by rituals older than memory. From afar, it might seem serene, regal in its symmetry, untouched by the chaos of the outer world. But if you look more closely, there is tension beneath the lacquer, restlessness behind the carved panels, lives unfolding, slowly and carefully, beneath the weight of order. Tonight, we will linger in that quiet unrest, in the rooms that looked peaceful but weren't, in the routines that were precise but not always pleasant, in the hierarchy that was flawless and suffocating. This is not the story of emperors and wars. It is the story of daily life behind the red doors, of eunuchs and concubines, of forgotten scholars, of ghostly rituals, and of a city that hummed quietly, day and night, under the illusion of peace. Let us begin at the bottom of the ladder, where the days were long, the rules many, and the walls too close. Imagine that you are very small, not in body necessarily, but in importance. You have entered through the Meridian Gate, which arches like a great mouth above you. Its teeth are the guards who do not smile. Its tongue is the long stretch of stone that leads into a city within a city. You are here to serve. You've passed the entrance exams, not the scholarly ones, but the silent, grueling ones for those who clean, cook, carry, fold, fetch, or wait. You were chosen from a village, or perhaps from the orphaned ranks of the empire's poorer provinces. You were young, plain, and importantly, obedient. Now, you are in the service of the Son of Heaven, and it's very cold. Winters in the Forbidden City are brutal. The marble tiles of the open courtyards crack under frost. Your shoes are thin. The wind threads through your cotton robes and slips up your sleeves. You shuffle forward, with your head bowed, your mouth dry, and your thoughts tightly bundled like the scrolls you will never read. Part 2. The structure of obedience. Nothing is yours. Not the robe you wear, not the brush you use to scrub the hallways, not even the name they call you, often a shortened version or a number. You belong to a department, and within that department, you belong to a team, and within that team, you serve a rank above you. Everything must be clean, silent, and swift. When the Empress Dowager's sedan chair approaches, you do not look. If the Emperor passes, you kneel. If a high-ranking eunuch speaks to you, you do not answer until spoken to twice. Disobedience is not corrected. It is erased. You might be reassigned, sent to the firewood room, or worse, the night soil crew, or quietly dismissed from the rear gate in the dead of night. Few ask questions. Fewer get answers. Part 3. The rhythm of the day. You rise before dawn, to the sound of the drum tower, a deep, rolling echo that spreads across the compound like ripples on water. You fold your bedding with precise corners and tuck it into a box that fits beneath your cot. Water must be heated. Fires must be lit in copper braziers. Chamber pots must be emptied, scrubbed, replaced, floors swept, doors wiped free of dust, incense lit, ink prepared. You eat quickly, a thin gruel, sometimes with pickled greens, rarely with meat. You are grateful for it. There are over 9,000 rooms in the Forbidden City. Each must be attended to. Not every day, but no one knows when an official inspection may occur. Even the dust is political. Part 4. The quiet of the eunuchs. You are not alone in your service. Thousands of eunuchs move like shadows through the palace. Some are kind, some are cruel. Most are neither. They do not walk quickly. Their pace is measured, not slow, but never hurried. Always watching, always calculating. They can rise, these eunuchs. Some control vast areas of the court, the kitchens, the archives, even the emperor's schedule. Their power is not shouted, it is folded into polite phrases, hidden behind gentle gestures. But make no mistake, they know everything. If you hope to survive your years here, you must not anger them. You will learn their names, their favorite teas, the angle at which they prefer their slippers placed, and you will offer these details without being asked. Part 5. Nights in the city of sleepwalkers. At night, the palace glows faintly with lantern light. Red silk softens the edges of darkness. The courtyard's empty. The halls echo. And you, if you are lucky, may sleep. But it is a light sleep. You may be summoned. You may be accused. You may be needed to prepare a bowl of ginger tea for a concubine who cannot sleep, or to fetch water for a scholar burning midnight oil. You must not make noise. You must not bump into walls. You must not think too much about the sounds you sometimes hear in the older parts of the palace, the whispers, the footsteps that do not belong to anyone awake, the wind that smells faintly of incense and sorrow. Part 6. Illness, mistakes, and the end of service. Illness is common. There is no heating in the servants' quarters, and few treatments for coughs that linger too long. If you fall behind in your duties, someone else will step in. You may be punished, sometimes publicly, with a switch, more often privately, with a silence that means you no longer belong. Most servants stay a handful of years. Some are promoted to better quarters, more refined work. A lucky few may be married off by arrangement, given a stipend, and sent back to the provinces as overseers or minor clerks. Others simply vanish. Their shoes remain under the cot, their bedding folded neatly, and in the morning, someone else arrives to fill the gap. Part 7. Stepping back out. If you were allowed to leave the palace, and most are not until their service ends, you would blink in the daylight, disoriented by the space. The outside world would seem loud, messy, free, and you would not quite know what to do with it, because inside the Forbidden City, every moment of your life was dictated. It was clean, it was orderly, it was beautiful, and it was never, ever peaceful. Imagine, if you will, a man sitting alone in the corner of a Roman villa, not the grand columned atrium that guests see, but a quieter study tucked away in a back room. Scrolls surround him, but they are not for show. His fingers are stained with ink, and his back aches from too many hours bent over diagrams and notes. He is not young, not anymore. His name is Vitruvius, and he is perhaps a little disappointed. Not in his work. His work has shape, logic, and clarity. It makes sense, but the world around him rarely does. Marcus Vitruvius Pollio lived in the high 1st century BCE, during a Rome that was noisy with ambition. Civil wars had torn through the Republic, leaving behind both rubble and opportunity. Julius Caesar had risen and fallen. Augustus, still just Octavian to most, was tightening his grip. Architecture was booming. Cities were expanding. Monuments were being raised not only to the gods but to men. Vitruvius watched all this. He worked quietly at the edges. A military engineer, a planner of fortifications, a draftsman of aqueducts and siege machines. But he dreamed of more. Not taller arches or grander temples, though those had their place, but of principles, of harmony, of beauty with reason. He wanted buildings to think. Part 2. The book he couldn't stop writing in his later years. When the hammer and chisel grew too heavy, Vitruvius began to write. 10 scrolls, 10 books, carefully composed in Latin but echoing the measured voice of Greek treatises. His De Architectura, on architecture, was not a manual, it was a manifesto. Architecture, he wrote, must have 3 qualities: firmitas, strength; utilitas, function; And Venustas, beauty. A building should stand well, serve well, and look well. None of these alone would suffice. The scrolls are not poetic. They are not fiery or impassioned. They are steady, methodical, and full of observations on materials, on proportions, on machines, on acoustics, on the layout of a city. He included diagrams, now lost. He described the way sound carries in a theatre, the ideal orientation of a basilica, the width of a column's base. He wrote about water clocks and pulleys, siege towers and sundials. He wrote about baths and bricks inside baths. And beneath it all, he wrote about dignity. Buildings, he believed, reflected the minds of those who made them, and therefore they had to be careful. Part 3. A Life Without Applause. There are no statues of Vitruvius from his lifetime, no triumphal arch bearing his name. He was not the architect of the Colosseum or the Pantheon. His name does not ring through guidebooks or appear in tourist maps. He was not glamorous. He was not dramatic, and yet quietly his ideas endured. For centuries, his books were read and copied. In the Middle Ages, they were preserved by monks. In the Renaissance, they sparked a revolution. Da Vinci's famous Vitruvian Man, a figure inscribed in a circle and square, is named after him. Why? Because Vitruvius described the human body as the source of proportion. A building, he said, should reflect the ideal ratios of the body, just as the body reflects nature. He saw the world in patterns. He believed in the logic of design, not only as a craft, but as a philosophy. Part 4. A man of exactitudes. Imagine him again, older now. He walks slowly through the forum, measuring with his eyes, noticing how a portico casts shadow in the wrong place, frowning at a column just slightly off, shaking his head at the use of poor stone. He was not content. Rome, to him, often missed the point. Its buildings were too focused on size, spectacle, and politics. He preferred buildings that whispered, not shouted. That worked silently. That made their inhabitants feel both secure and inspired. He criticized extravagance. He disliked fashion for fashion's sake. He preferred a temple that lasted quietly than one that dazzled and crumbled. And he often felt unseen. He wrote De Architectura not to impress, but to instruct, to leave behind a way of thinking, a blueprint for dignity. Part 5. The places he knew and didn't know. Vitruvius travelled as a soldier and engineer. He saw the rough edges of Rome, the provinces, the border towns, the military encampments. He saw the baths of Baiae, the forums of provincial towns, the sewers under city streets. But he never saw the Pantheon, never stood under its dome. He did not live to see the full bloom of imperial Roman architecture. His world was still transitional, bridging republic and empire. He looked backward, to the Greeks, even as Rome charged forward. And yet his ideas quietly underpinned what came next. Every architect who tried to balance symmetry and strength, who studied the rules of geometry and proportion, who built with a sense of measured grace, they all walked in the long, quiet shadow of Vitruvius. Part 6. The Man Beneath the Scrolls. We know so little about his private life. Whether he had family, whether he ever truly saw his work adopted in his lifetime, whether he felt satisfied. We know that he believed architecture was a moral pursuit, that it required not only skill but character, that it should be approached with humility. He probably died in obscurity, but centuries later, his voice still speaks. It is a calm voice, a precise voice, not eager to impress, but determined to explain. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, and yet it lingers, like the shape of a courtyard designed to catch the wind, like a blueprint rolled tight, waiting quietly to be unrolled. Beneath, the streets of ancient Rome, below the rattle of carts and the clang of public fountains, there was another world, not a sewer, though the air was often damp, not a tomb, though the walls were lined with symbols of death and rebirth. It was a place where the light was not entirely gone, but softened, flickering like oil lamps cradled in stone alcoves. Shadows danced across carved reliefs of men and bulls, of stars and serpents, of strange rituals now long forgotten. These were the Mithraea, secret temples hidden underground or tucked behind the facades of ordinary buildings. Small, narrow spaces where a Roman man, never a woman, might step away from the official temples, from the public rites, from Jupiter and Mars and Venus. He would descend quietly into something older, more private, a different truth. He would enter the cult of Mithras. Part 2. A foreign god in a familiar city. Mithras was not born in Rome. Like so much of Roman religion, he was adopted, adapted, layered upon, revised. His roots stretched far east, perhaps as far as Persia. But by the time he arrived in the Roman world, sometime in the 1st century CE, he had become something else, something uniquely Roman. In the world above, religion was public. You sacrificed at the temple steps. You paraded during feast days. You prayed in the open air, but Mithras belonged to the shadows. Initiates were sworn to secrecy. The rites were private, the doctrines unwritten. What little we know comes from artwork. Stone carvings, inscriptions, a few scattered notes by outsiders who viewed the cult with curiosity or suspicion. At the center of it all was a single image, repeated across every Mithraeum like a mantra. Mithras, cloaked and youthful, plunging a dagger into the neck of a bull. Around him, animals, symbols, stars. A dog lapping the blood, a scorpion attacking the bull's genitals, a serpent curled near the hooves. What it meant exactly, no one today can say with certainty, but it meant something. Part 3. A place of ritual. And rank imagine walking into one of these narrow underground chambers. The walls are curved, like a tunnel, often carved from existing rock. Along the sides, low benches, stone platforms, line the room. A narrow central aisle separates them. At the far end stands the carved image of Mithras slaying the bull, the tauroctony, lit by the glow of oil lamps. This was no grand basilica. It was intimate, close, almost womb-like. There were rituals here, probably meals, communal, sacred. There were initiations, 7 grades of membership, each with a symbolic name: raven, bridegroom, soldier, lion, Persian, courier of the sun, and father. Each stage was earned through rites that are only dimly known, perhaps symbolic trials, oaths, tests of endurance. There was an altar, a sacred fire, perhaps, and silence, or low murmured chants. It was not open to the public, not a spectacle. It was a place to belong, to learn, to transform. Part 4. The men who came. Here Mithraism spread through the Roman army. It found a home in border towns and garrisons. Soldiers, customs officers, clerks, merchants, all could be found in the ranks of Mithras's followers. It was especially popular among those who lived lives of duty and discipline. The rites offered brotherhood, order, meaning. In a chaotic empire, Mithras promised structure. And in a society obsessed with rank and status, the cult offered a different kind of hierarchy, one earned not by birth, but by spiritual progression. These men may have spent their days enforcing imperial rules, building fortifications, or managing supply routes, but in the evenings, by lamplight, they gathered underground to share in a different world. It was personal, binding, mysterious, and it never asked for public recognition. Part 5. Hidden and forgotten. For centuries, Mithraea dotted the empire, from the outskirts of London to the shores of the Danube to the hills above Rome. But as the centuries passed, as Christianity grew and the old cults faded, the Mithraea were abandoned. Some were destroyed. Others were simply sealed up and forgotten. And that is how we find them today, buried beneath later buildings, beneath churches and apartments and office blocks, discovered only by accident, by archaeologists excavating cellars, by workmen digging foundations by chance. In Rome alone, dozens have been unearthed. One beneath the church of San Clemente, near the Colosseum. Another beneath the baths of Caracalla. Another, partially preserved, beneath the modern Ministry of Finance. In each, the same layout, the same imagery, the same sense of quiet, of secrecy, as if time had not erased them, but merely hidden them. Part 6. The puzzle. That remains, we still do not know the full beliefs of Mithraism. There are no holy books, no surviving doctrine, only carvings, altars, and scattered inscriptions. Some scholars believe the bull-slaying scene symbolizes the turning of the heavens, a cosmological event. Others see in it the promise of resurrection, of divine order, of triumph over chaos. Perhaps it was many things, to many people. But perhaps that's the point. Mithraism offered a refuge in a world of spectacle, a still place, a narrow room, a flickering lamp, a shared meal, a bond of brothers. No one left us a full explanation. No one wrote down what happened in the silence below Rome. But if you ever stand in one of these ancient Mithraea, preserved, barely lit, you can almost feel it. The hush, the carved stone, the steady beat of a ritual once known, now forgotten, not lost in time, just waiting quietly in the dark. Imagine the warmth of a Roman afternoon beginning to fade. The golden light of the setting sun glinting off marble columns, and the soft ripple of a courtyard fountain. You've stepped inside the domus, the home, of a wealthy Roman patrician. There is quiet all around, punctuated only by the chirp of caged birds and the distant murmur of slaves preparing for the evening's gathering. This is not merely dinner. This is the cena, a ritual of food, status, and spectacle. Your host, clad in a pristine toga that whispers with every careful step, is not rushing. Guests will not arrive all at once. The cena is not a meal of hunger, but of presence. It will unfold slowly, from twilight into evening, with wine that never ceases to flow, and courses that move like pages in a book, each intended not to satisfy the belly, but to display refinement, taste, and wealth. Beneath it all, of course, are the silent workers, household slaves, whose footsteps are hushed, whose duties are precise, and whose efforts make the illusion of ease possible. Part 2. Reclining to dine, unlike modern meals, where one sits upright at a table. The Roman elite dined while reclining. 3 couches, arranged in a U-shape around a central table, formed the triclinium, a name that literally means 3 couches. Guests reclined on their left side, propped up by cushions, leaving their right hand free to reach for morsels or raise a goblet. To recline was a sign of freedom and status. Slaves could not recline. Women, at least in earlier periods, were expected to sit. Over time, customs changed, but reclining remained an unmistakable marker of class. And so, the act of lying down to eat was itself a display. One did not slouch, one did not overreach. To eat like a Roman patrician was to balance indulgence with poise. Part 3. The courses unfold. The cena unfolded in stages, often 3. First came the gustatio, or appetizer. Light fare, perhaps olives marinated in vinegar, lettuce with fish sauce, or small sausages seasoned with herbs. Eggs were common too. The Romans, in fact, had a saying, ab ovo usque ad mala, from the egg to the apples, meaning from start to finish. Then the prima mensa, the main course. Here, the variety was nearly endless, shaped by wealth, season, and availability. Roasted pork with honey glaze, dormice stuffed with spiced meat and dipped in poppy seeds, fish sauces with fermented anchovy, the infamous garum, were used liberally, their sharp aroma considered a delicacy, not an offense. And finally, the secunda mensa, dessert. Not sugary sweets as we know them, but fruit, nuts, and wine-laced pastries. Honey was used generously, as sugar did not yet exist in Roman kitchens. Each course came slowly, with conversation weaving around the arrival of each new dish. The aim was not to eat quickly, nor to stop when full. The aim was to experience flavor, company, elegance. Part 4. Conversation, philosophy, and games. A Roman dinner was never just about food. The host, depending on his circle, might invite poets, orators, philosophers, even jesters. There might be readings of literature, discussions of politics, ethics, or the events of the day. There might be music, played softly on the lyre or flute. Sometimes, between courses, there were games, riddles, or light performances. But all of it was carefully structured. Who spoke and when mattered. To interrupt the wrong person or take too long with a story was a breach of etiquette. To be charming but not too clever, amusing but not vulgar. This was the art of the Roman dinner guest. At times, these gatherings might include entertainment, verging on the strange or unsettling, such as a man who could belch the alphabet or a trained monkey brought in to dance. But these were more often signs of a nouveau riche host eager to show off than a true patrician's refined evening. Part 5. Slaves, labor, and silence. Every bite, every goblet refilled, every oil lamp trimmed. It all depended on slaves. There were the Atrienses, who managed the house, the cooks, whose names we rarely know, who toiled in hot kitchens behind the walls, the cupbearers, who had to memorize guests' preferences, the towel-bearers, who silently wiped up spills or provided scented cloths between courses. Their movements were nearly invisible, their presence constant. Some were children, others grown men. Many were born into this work. Others had been taken by force through war or debt. At a truly elaborate cena, a host might even use slaves as part of the decor, dressed in costumes, positioned like statues, never speaking unless spoken to. To the elite, this was simply the rhythm of their lives. To the slaves, it was endless performance, without reward, without escape. Part 6. The feeling of emptiness as the meal stretched on, past sunset, into lamplit darkness. Something else would often emerge, a quiet emptiness. Despite the conversation, despite the lavish plates and the polite laughter, there was something hollow in many of these gatherings. Writers of the time noted it. Seneca, for instance, critiqued the extravagance, the waste. Pliny the Younger once wrote about declining a lavish dinner in favor of a quiet evening with his books. Even the poet Martial, known for his biting wit, mocked the gaudy dinners where the host ate delicacies while the guests received scraps. Because behind all the show, many of these meals lacked warmth. They were tests of status, of alliances, of favors owed. The guest list was often political, not personal, and as the candles burned low, and the couches emptied, and the last fig was eaten, there remained only the echoes of footsteps, and the careful sweeping of crumbs by those who would never taste what they had served. Part 7. A final reflection. The Roman elite defined their identity through consumption, of land, of time, of food. But even in their richest feasts, the limits of satisfaction lingered. The fish sauce turned sour on the tongue. The wine dulled the mind. The guests left with debts of obligation rather than true companionship. And beneath it, all, in the unseen corners of the house, the real work continued. The washing of dishes, the scrubbing of floors, the stitching of linens for tomorrow's dinner. To dine like a patrician was to live in a world of surfaces, brilliant, polished, but thin. It was a performance played out nightly, where the actors reclined and the true labourers never left the stage. And now, as the final cup is drained and the fire dims, the house grows quiet again. Only the faint rustle of servants remains, and the cool night air drifting through the atrium, whispering of emptiness behind the gold. Now, as the night settles and your mind drifts further into softness, let yourself rest with the slow breath of history. We have wandered through the murky depths of Rome's sewers, where labourers toiled unseen, their hands brushing against centuries of refuse and decay. We lingered with Vitruvius, that restless builder of ideals, who dreamed of harmony in proportion and sought the wisdom of Greece amid the noise of empire. We descended again, this time into dim Mithraic chambers, where torchlight flickered on sculpted lions and initiates whispered vows no ear beyond those walls would ever know. And finally, we reclined in the polished chambers of patrician villas, where feasts stretched endlessly, and the sweetness of honeyed figs couldn't quite mask the bitterness of emptiness beneath the surface. Each of these places, whether beneath the streets or beneath the mask of elite refinement, offered us something quiet, something hidden. Rome, for all its grandeur, was a city of veils and layers, of shadows beneath the arches, of sweat behind the marble, of silence beneath the oratory. For every senator's speech, there were 10,000 voices never heard. For every statue raised in triumph, there were calloused hands that carved it, without recognition, without legacy. But that, perhaps, is the quiet rhythm of most of history. Not the loud battles or the named emperors, but the footsteps of the sewer cleaner echoing in tunnels long gone. The quiet breath of a kitchen slave watching candles melt. The murmured prayers in a Mithraeum sealed centuries ago. Even now, the stones of Rome remember. They hold the imprint of bare feet and broken sandals, of forgotten tools and crumbled bread, of laughter, loss, sweat, and silence. And so we return to rest, with the knowledge that every great civilization is built on countless unseen lives, that beneath every monument is the quiet labour of someone whose name was never written, but whose presence still lingers, softly, like dust in a shaft of evening light. As your eyes grow heavier, let your thoughts settle like those ancient layers of earth, each a memory, each a whisper, pressed gently into time. And if you sleep now, let it be deeply, with the calm of distant ages behind you, and the peace of knowing you've wandered far, only to return to stillness. Good night.